I'm Brendan Howlin. I'm a TD for Wexford. I'm the leader of the Labour Party. I've been a Labour politician for most of my adult life.
If Labour is elected into government, what is one immediate action you would take to tackle the climate crisis, and what is one long-term action?
The one thing that I would like to do immediately is to set up a bespoke department which should mobilise the resources of the state to deal with climate action, so that everything that's spent by government is put through the filter of will it impact on reducing our carbon emissions. Longer term, well, I mean, we need to send signals immediately, and we need to put resources immediately into addressing climate change. So we've said that we would establish a €1 billion fund to start immediately retrofitting houses. Now, that would be a medium-term project because there's an awful lot of houses to be retrofit. There will be a lot of resources required to ensure that we can reduce the energy requirements of our built houses.
Ireland has the second highest college fees in Europe, and a lot of colleges do say that they are still being underfunded. Is there any plans from Labour to address this issue and to ensure that third level colleges and institutions are continuously being funded?
We are in favour of no college fees. We couldn't do that immediately. You said do it immediately. No, but we would reduce college fees during the lifetime of any government we were a part of. So the SUSI grant scheme have to be revised to ensure that people can afford, even if they can pay the fees, they can afford to live close to the colleges that they attend, and that's something that would be a priority for us.
There are 10,000 homeless people now, as you know, and 4,000 of those are young people whose homeless status is affecting their ability to be a young person in Ireland. And what is one change that Labour would make upon coming into government, and what is one long-term change in order to address the homeless crisis?
We have a housing crisis, and the solution is build more houses. That sounds very trite and very straightforward, but that's actually the solution. So what we would do now, and we've been thinking very long and hard about this, is to have an emergency building programme. We have land, we have the resources, and it's going to be expensive. We've set out €16 billion would be the cost of building 80,000 social and affordable houses. We can use the state resources and the European Investment Bank. We've already had discussions with those and others, and we can solve the gap between supply and demand. And once we get it into sync, we build every year after that to ensure that we never have a crisis like this again.
What is one proposal Labour would have in place in order to ensure young people have access to mental health care and professional mental health care when and if they need it?
So we need to build those teams across the country. We also need to take the pressure off the acute hospitals. When the whole new mental health strategy was being implemented, and a good one, to close down the old Victorian mental hospitals, we were to have treatment in the community. But there will be a need for acute beds, and it was always understood that they would be provided within the settings of the existing hospital network, so that if you had a psychotic episode or a psychiatric problem, it'd be no different to having any other health problem that you'd go to your local hospital and be treated there by experts. That was never implemented. So we need to provide those acute beds for people who need hospital treatment, and we need to have much more resourced teams of people in the outreach facilities to ensure that anybody who is under stress has a resource they can get to.
1/3 of those living in direct provision are children who are living on less than €30 per week. If a Labour government was to come in after the general election, would Labour support the continuation, the reform of, or the abolition of direct provision? And in what way would asylum seekers be treated differently under a Labour government?
I think what we need to do is have very radical reform. I don't think we can do away with direct provision immediately, because if you look at it, there's about 80 or 90 asylum seekers arriving weekly into this country right now. And we have a housing crisis. We simply can't ask them to go on the housing list. That would be no solution at all. And under international law, we have a legal obligation to provide immediate shelter, provide food and sustenance and care and health supports to asylum seekers. The way to do that is to have some sort of publicly owned provision. It should be run by the state or by NGOs authorised by the state for that purpose. It should be independently inspected so that standards are of the highest level, with a complaints mechanism for people to reach out if there's any issues across the direct provision system. So that radical reform could happen immediately. And in parallel to that is to speed up the processing of applications. Because what is really depressing people, and I've talked to dozens, is the length of time it takes to have your asylum application processed in this country. So reform radically the current provision and put the resources in to ensure that determinations are made on asylum applications within a reasonable time frame. I'm talking about 6 months.